Hi, everyone. Welcome to session 5 of the New to North America webinar series, job search training webinar series. Thank you so much for joining me. Usually I say us, but it's just me. I'm flying solo. Amy is very busy at work getting sessions 6 and 7 ready for you guys. It's all about interviewing, which I know is an area of stress for many job seekers, especially if we're new to Canada or the US. So she's really working hard at getting that ready for us, and it's going to be outstanding. I'm really excited about session 6 and 7. So today we are going to look at a few more resumes from newcomers like yourselves. And I'm really excited about these ones because they're very different, and they are just going to be a great learning experience. Now, I hope everybody can hear me. If you are not, I would ask you to say, please tell me. But if you can't hear me, how would you tell me? Anyway, I did test my audio beforehand, so I think we're okay. Anyway, hi, Manoj. Can you hear me okay? Can you just let me know in the chat? So thank you. All right. So we have 3 resumes that we're going to look at today. Very different career targets, which is fantastic for our purposes. And we are going to dig a little more deeply into them. We only have 3, so we have more time to devote to each. And they're really, I was really excited as I was taking my notes down for each of these resumes. And so if you have, thank you so much, Manoj. If you have any questions as we go through, please do pop them in the chat. I will circle back to your questions after we go through the resume, each resume. And so why don't we dive right in without further delay? So let's share our first resume. And I took a lot of notes earlier today. So I want to be super thorough with these resumes, and let's make sure we can see the resume. Yes, I can see that we can see them. Okay, so our first resume that we're going to be looking at is a resume from someone who is targeting like a communications leader role, communications manager, both internal and external communications. So when we think of a communications resume, we want to make sure that it's uh, exceedingly well written, because that's the business that you're in, right? And there should be no room for misunderstanding or leaving the reader guessing. So in this case, this does at first glance appear to be a well-written resume. From a looks perspective, let's start there. So the font choice is okay. So we've got Garamond. If we want to make this a more modern and fresh look and feel right out of the gate, my recommendation would be to change the font to something that is sans serif, which is something that we mentioned in the resume training in session 3. So sans serif would be my recommendation in this case, just to modernize the resume right out of the gate. Rather than going right into work experience, I would like to see a summary section here. So a professional profile paragraph that describes you and the your unique approach to communications, or what you're known for, what your reputation is as a communications leader. I want to see that right after we've got your name and your contact information. Also, after name, I'd like to see your title. So it's going to be the title of the job to which you're applying. So perhaps communications manager or internal communications specialist, whatever the actual job title is, make sure that you put it right here. And then, so we talked about the professional profile paragraph. I'd also like to see a skills section as well before we jump right into the experience, just to give the reader a snapshot of the skills that you'll bring to the table in your next role in communications. And actually, we do have a skills section down at the bottom. So I would recommend transplanting that to the top. Let's see if it'll let me do that. So we've got pretend our professional profile paragraph is there, and then we've got our skills section. Now, with the skills section, we want to make sure that we're prioritizing the kind of core skills that are required of us in our target job. So I would say something like internal communications or communication strategy or public relations or employee communications or something like that will be far more important to share first before SharePoint. SharePoint is a good skill to have, but the bigger, broader skills of actually having the skills and communications are more important to mention right up front. So that's what my recommendation would be there. Let's get into the experience section. So with the experience section, I see that your last role, most recent role ended in April 2021. So my question would be, how have you been spending the time since you left that role? Was it a reorganization? If so, it's okay to mention that. I would just mention with a quick one-liner that you're ready for your next role as a communications manager or in communications, that was following, say, a reorganization at your last company. As we go through the the experience section, what I'm noticing is a lot of bullets. So a lot in an overuse of bullets. So if you've heard me use the term bullet barf, that's kind of what we've got going on here. So with our bullets, we really want to make sure that we're using bullets strategically to highlight our best accomplishments. So I made this video on my YouTube channel, and I think I titled it something like recruiter approved work experience format or something like that. And it really just focuses on the suggestions or the suggested format for your work experience. So what we want to open with is a small paragraph. So after the city and province, right underneath, just a small paragraph that talks about our actual responsibilities and gives context to the job. And then follow that up with some select and our best accomplishments within the role. Okay. Okay. So, another thing that I want to point out, and by the way, I will link to that video that I referred to in the email when I send the replay of this out. And then what we want to take a look at is just how much real estate this job is taking up. Now, I think I know what you're going for here in that you wanted to make sure that your Canadian work experience took up a good chunk of your resume. So that was good intuition on your part. And it will take up probably the first after we've got your profile paragraph, we've got your skills section, then we've got your experience, and that will probably take up the rest of page 1 on your resume. So you don't need to worry about saying all of this. And the way we've got this divided here as well, so we've got buckets of brand communication, change management, driving internal communications, and culture catalyst. So that kind of took a bit of a detour with kind of the subheader style we were going for here. Maybe something like internal communications and culture would have been a better label here. But what this really appears to be is more so like a functional resume. I'm okay with you using a couple buckets like brand communication and say internal communications or change management, whatever are the most important buckets of skills and strengths that you want to highlight. But we can't use these many bullets because all the good stuff that you've done will get lost in the noise. So I would say maybe using about 4 bullets under 2 different buckets of main or core skills and strengths would be useful for you and would help communicate your strengths here. So let's dive into a few of the bullets. But before I do that, I'm just going to hop over to the chat, see if there's anything going on. No, okay. If there are any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. I will check back in a second. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of the actual bullets here. So let's just take a look at the first one. So we've got transformed a relatively non-existent corporate social media profile into an online presence across Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn by updating the social media policy and content curation for 3 active accounts. Okay, so it sounds like you're stressing that it sounds like you're stressing the 3 social media accounts here. But I think what's more important here is that you um like you said at the beginning, transformed a relatively non-existent corporate social media profile into an online presence. So I don't think it's so much the transformation as it is that you established the online presence. And in this case, if we're stating that we establish something or that we transform something, it will be important for us to give the previous state and then the state that we took it to. So in this case, a metric would be super important. So something maybe around media impressions. If you tracked the growth of these 3 different accounts. I'm less so interested in the number of accounts themselves and more so interested in what you grew the online presence to. So if we can't measure that here, maybe less detail about the accounts themselves and more detail about the social media policy. So you updated it, meaning what exactly? Did you make it more digital focused, or of course it is social media? Did you make it more engagement focused? Did you make it more, did you build like a content calendar? You mentioned content curation. Did you build a content calendar? Something more specific so that the reader can kind of picture you transforming this social media or really building the social media presence from very little or something that was, as you said, non-existent. So really bringing in that metric. Let's take a look at this next bullet to see, because I do see you have a metric here, which is really good. So served as project lead for website redesign, working with a third-party firm to overhaul site structure, layout, and content. New website incorporated significantly improved functionality and led to increased traffic by 30%. Okay, so I would say right out of the gate, so right at the top of this bullet, increased website traffic or website traffic by 30%. And then you can mention that you served as project lead for website redesign, working with a third-party firm to overhaul overhaul the site or redesign the site. If there's improved functionality, it'd be great if you could be more specific about that. Was it did you guys map a new like user journey? Like what happened here exactly? Also, these bullets aren't as strong from a, like, this is a good, like, more so marketing focused bullets here. I would like to see more communication specific bullets right out of the gate. So it might be better to move up your internal communications to here, but it does really depend on what you're targeting. Like, do they emphasize more brand communication versus internal communications? If so, then you're on the right track. But I have a feeling the reader might be a little confused with you opening with these types of bullets rather than something that's more specific to communications. So why don't we take a look at a couple bullets here? So leverage multiple business lines, shared services, and people experience in 20 countries to overhaul senior leadership and executive internal communication strategy, resulting in 90% or higher employee satisfaction scores. Okay, so yeah, this is a very strong bullet. So my impression is that we would do better to bring this section up first and then get into brand communication. So, and here, so we've got a metric which is good, resulting in 90% or higher employee satisfaction scores from 65%. So we need to rephrase this a little. So what we're saying here is that we boosted employee satisfaction scores from 65% to 90% plus by 9% plus, let's say across 20 countries, by overhauling senior leadership and executive internal communication strategy. And I think that would be more effective. So again, let's go back to why we want to put the metric at the front here. And that goes back to the rack approach. So when we open with the results of what we've done, so the R in rack, that it will really catch the reader's attention versus if we give a lot of preamble before we actually give the results. So we want to just hit the reader with the results and then follow it up with some action. That's the A in rack, and context for how we achieve that result. And I think this will be a lot more effective and impactful for you. And will really drive home your strengths with the reader rather than having all the great things you've done lost sort of at the end of the bullets. Okay. Yeah, so that's generally my feedback. Let's take a look at the change management section, and then I'm going to carry on to the next resume. So driving organizational transformation globally with senior leadership, business leaders, and support functions. Okay. I know you took the confidential information out of here, so maybe that's why I don't have any context for this. But I would like to know what type of organizational transformation you led here. Like, what were we taking the organization from and taking it to? This could also be something that's more a responsibility that might belong better in the opening paragraph, which would live right under your job, or right under the job title, employer, and city and province. Small paragraph, including your responsibilities, including context for the role. And then we would get into these bullets. Let's see here. Developed several governance policies and process documents for the communications team, including crisis communication plan, et cetera, et cetera. Unless you can measure this, I'm not sure that this would bring a great deal of impact or communicate a great deal of impact to the reader. This might serve you better as an actual responsibility, again, in that small paragraph describing your role. Manage the strategy, development, and implementation of employee and board communication to support an Oracle rollout globally for shared services that affected. Okay, so I feel like this might do better as one of your opening bullets. So manage the strategy, development, and implementation of employee. So manage the strategy, development, and implementation of employee and board communication to support Oracle rollout globally. Let's see, manage the strategy, development, and implementation of employee and board communications to facilitate Oracle rollout globally for shared services impacting, let's say, 3,500 employees in 20 countries. We have already said the 20 countries up here. But maybe this is a different bullet. I'm not really sure. What might also be a good metric to incorporate here, less so about the 20 countries, is something around user adoption. So did your strategy, your communication strategy, help lead to a strong user adoption of the Oracle solution? If so, then I would probably include that here. But anyway, you do have some good metrics in here. It's all about really prioritizing those metrics that you want to highlight and not highlighting everything in a bullet. Again, we're going to separate some of the content out into a small paragraph to give context to the role. And then we're going to highlight the best accomplishments. And certainly you can use a couple buckets, say internal communications and culture, and then maybe brand communications or external communications, because I know you wanted to look at targeting a role that embodied both aspects of communications. So again, I would say pick your best 4 bullets for each of these rules, or I'm sorry, for each of these buckets. And then getting into your other work experience down here. I'm not going to get too deep into the bullets because it's going to be very similar feedback, but I would like to see a little bit of context in a small paragraph. You've got the room, so go ahead and do that. And then you can highlight, again, your best accomplishments in bullets rather than using bullets to highlight responsibilities. So again, that video about formatting your work experience section, I'll be sending that out with this replay, so you'll be able to reference it. Okay. All right. So let's close that down. Let's get into any questions. No questions. Okie dokie. All right. So let's get into our next resume. All right. So our next resume here is for a project coordinator or manager. All right. So just going to take a sip of water while you guys take a look at this resume. What do we notice right out of the gates with this resume? What jumps out as being something that might be an obstacle for this resume owner? Anything come to mind? I'll give you a hint. There's some issues with the format and some issues with the font. And that's just from a looks perspective. We're going to get into the content itself as well. So without leaving you hanging, there's 2 main things that jump out to me with this resume just from glancing at it initially. So we've got a format issue in that this format of resume is called a multi-panel resume. So why do we call it multi-panel? Because we've got information in this section, this panel of the resume, and then we've got some totally different information in this section of the resume, this panel right here. So we've got the education, domain, specializations, etc. So multi-panel resumes are very challenging for readers to read. By having to hop around to different sections of the resume, it creates work for the reader. And when we create work for the reader, we can easily lose them. So we don't want to create work for them. One recruiter I know, I think I mentioned this in an earlier session, he said, I don't want to go on a treasure hunt for the information I need. So, and that's what this format of resume puts us in the position of, is we have to hunt for the information that we need because it's not in an expected or anticipated format for us. So there's that. Also, the font size, because I believe this job seeker felt very pressured to um, provide a lot of information, yet fit their resume on one page. We have font size of 6. I do not recommend dropping your font size below a 10-point font. We never know if someone might print our resume out. So, of course, if our resume is digital, someone can just zoom in. We know that. But we never know if it's going to be put onto paper. And if it's put onto paper, someone is going to have difficulty reading this resume. Many people will have difficulty reading this resume. And so once it's difficult to read, again, once we're creating that work for the reader, we're losing the reader. Okay. So, but again, I think it's because this resume owner felt pressured to be on this one singular page, and there's no rule around how many pages a resume needs to be. It can, if it can fit on one comfortably, then great. That's not the case for most experienced professionals. That is something I would expect to see for someone who is a new grad. This person is not a new grad, so I want to see them on 2 pages. And even when we're getting into the 2-page territory, if we're a very experienced professional, like 20 plus years, if you need to go on a 3rd page, it's okay. There's no hard and fast rules around page, like number of pages in a resume. And never have I heard a recruiter say that they stop reading after page 1, because why would they? That's shooting themselves in the foot when they need to get to the candidate who's the right fit for the job. Okay, so for this resume owner, I really recommend that you revisit session 3 of our resume training. And the replay that I'll send out with this replay, this recording will include the recording for session 3 as well. So make sure you watch that and pay attention to the resume format. So if you have to pause it, look at the resume format. Basically what I want to see from this resume owner is I really want to see their content taking up the width of the page. I'd like to see some margins possibly a little thicker. These look a little skinny. So 1.5 centimeters is a good margin width. So 1.5 centimeters would be good. And then using the width of the page to include your content. And it'll get easier to include that content when we're starting to cut some sections that aren't serving us in this resume. So some sections that aren't serving us here are, and I made a list. Let's see. So in the summary section, I'd like to see these bullets converted into a skills section. So in the replay that I send out of this recording, it's also going to include a couple links to how to create your skills sections in your resume. So we've got on this resume a couple different areas where we've included skills. So we've got these skills. But we've also got domains, which are skills or specializations, basically, that I would expect to see in this opening paragraph. Then we've got specializations, which read more like skills. And then we've got technical skills, which are definitely skills. So we don't need to separate all these skills and strengths into multiple sections. We can really trim them down and create a skills section right after our summary. So make sure to check that out. Let's see here. Also, when I go through the skills and the specializations and the different technical acumen, it calls into question if we're using the right skills or emphasizing the right skills for our target role of project manager, project coordinator. So, does a project coordinator need to know JIRA? I mean, maybe, but we want to make sure that we are providing and including skills in our resume that we have, that are required and desired of us in our target role, and that can be backed up by the accomplishments that we share in our resume in the work experience section. In taking a further look at the additional sections here, we've got an awards section. We don't need a separate awards section. What I recommend is basically moving each of these awards and placing them under the job in which they happened. I do have a video on award. I think Resume Space Wasters covers off what to do about the awards sections. And so basically, each of these awards would become an accomplishment bullet. And you would basically explain that you received, say, now I need to zoom in here, received the ABC Financial Services Zero Defect Award for consistently delivering top-notch quality or zero error. Sorry, that's way more obvious. For consistently delivering zero error quality level of work or what have you. And so that would be a bullet rather than an award section itself. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go through a few of these bullets, actually. Let's see. So one of the things that's super critical for someone who is targeting a project manager or project coordinator role, specifically if you have experience in projects, is that you need to really help the reader understand the scope of your project work. And I'm not seeing any of that really happening here. And so really, we want to include some context for the size of the projects that we worked on, the number of stakeholders that we rallied, maybe the value, if we can attach a dollar value to it, and the impact of it, what the expected impact of our project was if we weren't around to see the full impact. Let's say we moved on to the next project, or the actual results in a metric. We would want to see that. So let's take a look at this project coordinator role. And again, as you're reformatting your resume, we want to make sure that we're naming the job title, which we've got here, the place that we did it, so the employer, the city, and then underneath, we're going to use a small paragraph to give context to the role, and then follow it up with a few bullets to really drive home our accomplishments and the best work that we did and our best metrics, best results. So let's take a look at this first bullet here. So supported the manager of projects and initiatives in carrying out project duties and tasks, facilitated new B-School student onboarding, course enrollment, and built the schedule through VBS. I'm not sure what that is, so this is not really an accomplishment bullet. More so, this would be a good sentence to provide context for our role. So for that opening paragraph, providing some sort of context. Collaborated with faculty and program coordinators in gathering requirements to update curriculum for School of Business programs. Okay, again, that's more context for the job and not so much an accomplishment. And monitored and tracked project progress. Sure. So that again would be more so to build into that small paragraph, providing context for the role. So I'm sure that you've got some accomplishments here. This was a very brief role, but I bet you have some results that you created while you were doing this work. So maybe you could speak to, let's say, the way in which curriculum was updated? Did you help did you help the schools innovate the curriculum? Did you help them digitize the curriculum? Does that mean that it was able to reach more users? I'm sorry, more students? Did you see enrollment go up because of your work in projects, in these projects? So providing some element of metric or result would be very helpful here. If you don't have any metrics or results or are unaware of what was anticipated or expected, then you could start to bring in more of that, like we mentioned earlier, around the scope of your work. So you could talk about when you say curriculum, that isn't really measured. So you could, in a sense, measure, say, the number of courses that you facilitated updates to, or the number of impacted students. Again, you mentioned down here that you performed continuous risk identification and mitigation. Was there an instance in risk mitigation or identification where you pinpointed a really big problem and you were able to prevent it from happening before it happens? That would be a great thing to include here. And that would be a good accomplishment. So, yeah, those are, again, we really gotta, it's all about creating in the reader's mind an image of you doing the work. So that's what we're really going for here. And also, because this ended in May 22, so maybe instead of just saying project coordinator, you might want to say, I presume this was a contract. So maybe put in brackets contract here, just so the reader's aware that it was intentionally temporary. And then again, you could add a career note or a one-liner up above saying that you're ready for your next role as a project coordinator. And just leave it at that so that the reader's aware. Also, you could add in any school that you've been doing recently. Like I can see that you also just recently completed your postgrad in project management. So that could be something that you could mention in the one-liner up here as well, just to show the reader that you've really been productively spending your time. Let's see here. I'm just going to pop into the chat. Okay, Gordon, you mentioned right column. Sorry, that was several minutes ago. So sorry I missed that. All right. Just going to take a sip of water. Again, if you have any questions, please do leave them in the chat. Okay, so let's take a look at this lead analyst role here. Okay, so because this role is quite different from the job that we're targeting here, we really want to make sure that we are kind of translating the work that we did so that it makes sense to our new direction of being a project manager, a project coordinator. So let's take a look specifically at some of the bullets. So we've got, again, responsible for analyzing customer portfolios. This bullet right here, I would just do away with. It's not really going to serve us well in the body of our work experience. If there's something specific in here in terms of a financial services regulation or some sort of legislation that is necessary to know or be aware of in our target job or the job to which we're applying, we can name it in our skills section, but we don't need to spend this much space talking about those regulations. Okay, so responsible for analyzing customer portfolios of U.S. cardholders. Okay, so again, let's really err on the side of scope. So really talking about the number of customer portfolios or the let's say the value or the assets under management, really measuring how much we were responsible for in order to make this make sense for the direction of project management. Okay, so I think that will help you kind of translate this analyst work towards project work. All right, let's see here. Conducted business process walkthroughs to document process flowcharts. So this is along the lines of project management in terms of process or continuous service improvement, or let's say really managing workflow and making sure work gets done. So this is a good bullet, but we want to expand on it and be a little more specific around what results it had in order for it to make sense towards that project management route. Implementing 6 process improvement and automation projects. Okay, so that's good. Counting the number of projects is not as valuable as measuring the size of the projects, the scope of the projects, the value of the projects, because this could be 6 teeny tiny projects, or it could be 6 ginormous projects. So we really need to help the reader, again, imagine and see and visualize just how much you were entrusted with in terms of projects. How much value and generally the impact your projects had on stakeholders. Okay, and with your project coordinator here, this is largely duties. I can see that you've named here. I would like to see you expanding more and including more metrics if you can. Again, providing that scope for the projects that you worked on, the portfolio projects that you worked on, really include that here so the reader can imagine. You mentioned budgets here, to talk about the size of the budgets that you manage. And talk about the number of stakeholders that you maybe wrangled, or how many business units they represented, or what, like, were they across the company? Did they represent the entire company? There's a lot of places that you can go with describing the scope of your responsibility as a project coordinator. And then this extracurriculars here, this is not something that we would expect to see an extracurriculars section on a resume. I would just get rid of that. Oh, that made that mess up. Anyway, just get rid of that extracurriculars section, or convert the section into a other work experience highlights, and then include 3 or so project specific highlights from these 2 roles. But your teaching assistant role, that can go away. Yeah, so we really need to make, or I should say, present the information and the highlights from our work experience in a way that the reader anticipates or expects. And extracurriculars just isn't it. Okay, so that was a lot. All right. But it like, with this information and what you already know about resume writing, I'm confident that you can really transform your resume into something that will really serve you much better in your job search. Okay, so let's close that down. Okay. All right. So that was the second resume. And now we have one more resume that we're going to get into. And this resume is for a marketing manager. Okay. All right. I'm just going to zoom in a bit on this one. Touch. Okay. All right. So does anyone notice anything about this resume when you first look at it? Anything that you think could be done differently? Anyway, and I think that's what Gordon's comment was about earlier, is something that that stood out as possible for, or potential for improvement, let's say. Okay, so my first impression of this resume when I look at it is the this is purely looks based, um, purely aesthetic. All right, so when we first look at this, I think there are some good sections, and the layout has potential, and things are in a logical order. But for me, the content is really presented in a busy way, and the formatting is inconsistent. So, same feedback or same suggestion as with the last resume is to really go back to session 3 and watch and really analyze and take a look at the format of the resume, uh, and how we kind of cleanly define our subheaders. I think that's the word that I would use to describe how we've got some of the subheaders here. Is not clean. We're using a mix of capitals and lowercase, which is, for someone who looks at resumes all day, every day, this is going to stick out like a sore thumb. We've got a lot of different use of different sizes of fonts, different indents. So we really got to clean this up. It might be easier to start over and start with a blank page and do a cross compare of your blank page and your new old resume, and just type the information over from your old resume to a new one that is formatted in a clean way. So let's get a little more specific here. With the bullets, these can be flush with the margin here. We don't need to have an indent, and we don't need something that defines that these are accomplishments. It is known that your bullets are likely going to be accomplishments. Also, we want to make sure that we're formatting this. We really want to use, our margins are our friends. I'll say that our margins are our friends. So how I would like to format this is, we've got brand manager for makeup brands. Okay, so you can see that I'm using some more consistent capitalization rather than not. So this is going to be important. And then I've got a video on how to make your dates flush with the right hand margin, and I'll include that in the email with the replay of this video as well. And but I'm just going to show you how to do it on Word. And this is the desktop version of Word. On the online version of Word, this behaves differently. But there's over here over here in the left hand corner, there is a small white box, and it looks like an L. We want to click in the white box until we get a backwards L, and then we can click in our ruler here, right wherever in the ruler, and then drag this backwards L that appears flush with the margin, right to the margin's edge. And then all I had to do was tab once. So I went tab, and then I was taken all the way to the right hand margin where I can put my date range. Okay. And then underneath that, we would put the company name, and then the country, or the city and country or state, whatever it may be. And then underneath that, that's when you'd have your small paragraph to give context to the role. And then underneath that paragraph, then we would have our accomplishment bullets. Okay. So this will help give some more predictable structure to your resume. And I'll just put a vertical separator there instead. All right. So that's just something I wanted to show you right away. We're going to get more into your work experience section in a little bit. I'm going to scroll up here. Wanted to talk about your summary section a bit. So I like that I'm seeing a summary. So I'm pleased to see that. And when I see this, I see that you've included number of years of experience and bolded it. We don't need to bold selective parts of our content. It disrupts the reader's experience. And so I would just change this all to unbolded here. Okay. So 15 years of experience, number of years of experience is not a differentiator. And it doesn't really serve us in any way other than possibly making us look a certain age. Or giving the reader an idea, the impression like, well, if they've had that many years of experience, why aren't they further along in their career? You know what I mean? Like, it really opens you up to bias, and we want to avoid that. So when we're opening our profile, our professional profile paragraph, we really want to talk more about what we're known for, what our reputation is in terms of making a difference at the companies that we work for. So we've got marketer with, let's presume this doesn't exist, the 15 years. Marketer in the beauty industry, in managing retailer-specific projects across all channels and all categories. Okay, so retailer-specific projects across all channels and categories. To what end? Are you driving growth? Are you driving profit? Same thing. Are you helping brands get into new categories? Are you helping brands reach new customers? What are we doing here specifically? Are you helping retailer-specific beauty brands transform from something in the drugstore to something more luxury? Like, what are we doing here? Like, what are you doing to really help your organizations along? So that's what we really want to go for in this opening paragraph. Your skills section. So make sure to take a look at the skills videos that I'll be sending out for how to format the section. Further, with the skills section, we want to include skills that would be required or desired of us in the target role. So we're going for a marketing manager role. So the first skills that I would expect to see are things like marketing strategy, brand management, maybe consumer insights because you're an FMCG, things like that, luxury brands, maybe retail brands, whatever you want to say, or whatever is required of you is the skill that you want to mention here. Not so much skills that are either expected of you as a professional in any industry, or skills that aren't as relevant. So problem solving skills, it's expected you can problem solve. Project management, this might be important, but you would need to confirm by looking at the job posting. Ability to manage multiple projects effectively, I would think so. Communication and collaboration, I would think so. Management skills, what kind of management skills? It's a very broad term. So are you talking about team leadership? Are you talking about team building? Are you talking about hiring, recruiting, onboarding? What are we talking about here? As you can see, we got to be more specific here. Multicultural experience, possibly this could be a skill, but I would expect something like cross-cultural engagement rather than multicultural experience. If you want to call out the multicultural experience, you can mention that you have driven projects, say, or driven initiatives or campaigns across all channels, categories, in multiple global or multiple international markets, let's say, and that will cover off this multicultural experience. And then creative, that's something that you should be demonstrating in your accomplishments. So this skill section needs to be overhauled. Work experience section, let's get into some more specifics. So the gap here. All right, I like that you're addressing the gap, but there's a few things I would do differently here. So I think that you should simply mention here that you relocated from wherever to the US, uh, and that you're ready for your next role as a marketing leader. I wouldn't say now maternity leave, because then the reader's going to think, oh, well, if you're on maternity leave now, do you want a job? And I also wouldn't talk about jewelry creation here. We need to be careful when we talk about our side hustles, because if the side hustle is completely irrelevant or looks like it could be a distraction for us, then we don't want to be including it here. So I would go very general in this one line and say that you relocated from wherever to the US and you're ready for your next role as a marketing manager. That's it. Okay. So we've talked about the format of your work experience section. And again, we don't need to say that an accomplishment is an accomplishment, because we know. So let's take a look at, let's assume these are all accomplishments. So you're going to write a small paragraph that gives context to the role. And then we're going to take a look at these bullets. So drove the launch of makeup brand, set brand pricing structure, developed gondolas. Okay. So there's a lot being stated here. But I think that you really need to give some idea to the scope. Again, scope. That's the word of the day. Scope is bringing this back to the scope of the brand, the size of the brand, the value of the brand. We really want the reader to get an idea of what type of brand you launched, how big it was, so that they can see you taking care of their brand launches. So drove the let's say XX $1 million launch of makeup brands into let's say multiple international markets, assuming it was, I don't really know. And then you can also mention any sort of results that you achieved. Set brand pricing structure, develop gondolas, those would be included in your opening paragraph if they're important. Plan, developed, and implemented brand strategy and marketing plan. Again, to what end? What was the result? Created global promotional strategies by channel. So drug, perfumeries. Okay, so highlight a couple of your most successful promotional strategies or campaigns here. So let's say for perfume. So what did you do? What was the unique or innovative or creative? Because you said you were creative. What was the cool, neat take that you brought to the promotional strategy or campaign for perfume, and what was the result of that campaign? What was some cool multimedia that you brought into the campaign? Like, talk about the neat, creative things that you did for promoting the perfume. Managed marketing budget. How large was the budget? Give a dollar figure, especially if it was very large. And if you have some metrics for these other bullets, that's great. Otherwise, they sound like responsibilities and would belong in that opening paragraph here. Okay. Let's see here. And then we're going to go to questions and then wrap it up. Okay. So again, this goes back to the busyness of how we're presenting the content in your resume here. I'm not sure why we've got trade marketing activities, 1, 2, 3, 4, category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, promotions. This really reads like a copy paste from a job description, and we don't really want to do that because it doesn't tell the reader how you made great things happen. Again, it tells the reader about what you were responsible for. And what you were responsible for can be covered in that small opening paragraph under the role title and company. And then we want to have accomplishment bullets that really drive home those metrics that you have. And I can see that you have some here. So 50% plus sellouts, increased sales 20%. That's good stuff. So that's what should belong in bullets, and less of this. You can, let's say you have like way too many accomplishments that you know what to do with, then you can use a couple buckets, like when we were looking at that communications leader resume at the beginning. So you could have trade marketing activities, just trade marketing, bullet, 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 or trade marketing highlights, I should say, bullet, bullet, bullet. Category management and merchandising highlights, bullet, bullet, bullet. So the bullets, again, are always going to be your best accomplishments and not so much your responsibilities. Okay. Yeah. So again, really take a look at that at session 3 to see the format or the expected format of a resume. That's going to help you a lot to really clean this up. Okay. So I hope that helps. I know that there was a lot there. Let's go over into the comments. All right. Thank you, Jude. Yeah, agreed. That's what I was seeing as well with that last resume. Several font sizes, different fonts, the underline, which wasn't necessary. Agreed. We really don't want to hurt the reader's eyes, right? When we're writing resumes, we really want to serve up the important information in a way that is easy for the reader to read and digest and get the important information that they need. So yeah, we were on the same page there for sure. All right, any questions before we wrap up? Again, I'm going to be sending out the replay of this so you can revisit it along with some other videos to reference to help you along with creating and updating your resume. And while I'm waiting for any questions to come in, just a reminder that we have 2 interview sessions coming up. And that's what Amy is busy working on right now. So session number 1 on interviewing is about interview prep. And that will be on September 27th. So next week, Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And then 2 weeks after that on October 11th, that will be about interview performance. So make sure you mark your calendars. I'll be providing those dates when I send the replay out as well. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Jude. I really appreciate your kind words. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Milana, thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Well, all the best to you, to everyone. Thank you for joining again today. Glad we could look at 2 or 3 more resumes. Oh, there's a question. Should we put months or the years are enough? So ideally, you would put months and years. So in the last resume we were looking at, we had 2017 to 2018. So we'd have month 2017 to month 2018. But if there's some like super short gaps in between our jobs, then we can use years. I don't think that a recruiter is going to be overly is going to throw a red flag too much if we have kind of continuous years of work experience. But in an ideal world, we would use month plus the year to month plus the year in our date ranges. Okay, that reminded me. I gotta include that video with how to adjust date ranges on flush with the right hand margin. So thanks for that question. That's very helpful. All right. Okay. Well, if you ask a question and I've already ended the session, then please feel free to reach out to me either on LinkedIn or Twitter or YouTube. Actually, YouTube is the best way to reach out to me in a comment. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Much appreciated. Have a great rest of the week and take care.